We will look in this video at the gross debt service ratio, short GDSR, and that ratio is basically just the ratio between your biggest expenses and your gross income. Your biggest expenses are called household expenses as well, and they include the mortgage, property taxes, and utilities. Now, as part of your mortgage, all loans that you have, so for example, you have a loan for a car, you have a loan for some other things, for your schooling, university, and so on, all those loans are combined into this section of the mortgage in this equation. So you have the mortgages, your loans, your property taxes and utilities. Those are your biggest expenses, and you divide that by your gross income. So right here is your mortgage payments, your property taxes, and your utilities, and you divide that by your gross income. That gives you the GDSR. Now the GDSR should never exceed 32%. So that is your lowest amount that you should have. In other words, your expenses, your household expenses, should never be more than 30% of your gross income. And what this means is that if I know what my gross income is, then I can find 32% of that, and then I know how much I can pay for my mortgage, property taxes, and utilities. Now, all of these have to be in the same time frame, so all of these values need to be monthly values. If you choose to use annual values, then make sure that all four of these again are annual values. But in most cases, your income is given as a monthly value, and so we keep all of these as monthly values as well. Keep in mind that if your GDSR is over 32%, it doesn't mean that you can't afford a house necessarily. It just means that you need to spread your payments out over a longer period of time. Meaning, instead of having an amortization period of 20 years where you get rid of that mortgage quickly, you need to have an amortization period of, say, 30 years or 25 years, and that would get your payments, mortgage payments, down, which means your GDSR is going to be lower. So what you need to be able to do with this equation then is figure out the GDSR as long as these values are given to me. But the other more important thing is, what is my maximum mortgage payment that I can have? Using the fact that my GDSR can only be as big as a maximum of 32% of my gross income. So what is my maximum mortgage payment that I can afford? And with that, I can determine the maximum amount of mortgage that I can buy. So let me show that to you with an example on the next page. In connection to these questions, there is usually an interest rate factor table. And the table basically relates your interest rate to the factor that converts your total mortgage to a monthly mortgage payment, or the other way around. And I'll explain that in a second. What this factor replaces is the TVM. So in a TVM, you can insert your loan and your interest rate and the number of years, and it gives you a monthly payment. Now, this table is set for a 25-year amortization period, and so the table that you have is usually connected to the question that you're given. So if I wanted to figure out, using a TVM, how much of a monthly payment I will need to pay with an interest rate of 8.5% over a 25-year period, then I see that this is $1,393.04. Now the table has a factor, associated with that 8.5%. See, this factor converts your mortgage to a monthly payment. What this factor says is that your monthly payment is this much of your mortgage. In other words, take your mortgage, which is $173,000, and multiply it by 0.00795, and you will get your monthly payment. So this is your monthly mortgage payment based on this factor. And if you compare that to the TVM, you can see that that is very similar to what the TVM says. So it's just a very quick way to convert your mortgage into a monthly payment. You can also go backwards, and you can figure out from your monthly payment, using this factor, you can find out what your mortgage is. And to do that, you would have to take your payment and divide it by the factor to figure out what this mortgage is. And if you are not quite sure which one to use, should you multiply or should you divide, here's what you can think of. If you want to find a monthly payment from your mortgage, your answer should be less than your mortgage. And you get that answer by multiplying by the factor. But if you want to find a mortgage from a monthly payment, your mortgage value, your answer will be bigger than your monthly payments, which means you need to divide by this factor then to get a bigger number. So that's just a tip to remember which operation to do, either a multiplication by this factor or a division by this factor. So let us go into the example, and we will go to get through some of this in this example as well. You would like to buy a $193,000 house. You are able to make down payment of $20,000. The bank will finance the rest for you at a rate of 8.5% for 25 years, where we will use this interest rate factor. Your gross monthly income is $3,800, and you estimate your annual property taxes at around $1,320 and your utilities at $200 per month. And so what you should be able to see here is the following. This is an annual value, this is a monthly value, and your gross income is also a monthly value. So before you do anything, I would convert everything into monthly values, and that is this one here, the annual property taxes of $1,320. Let's quickly convert that into a monthly value. And so I now have everything in a monthly value. And so my first question now asks, what is your maximum monthly mortgage payment? So I will use the Gdsr equation for this. And let me point out with this equation what we are given. In this equation, we have the property taxes, and those are the $110 monthly value. In this equation, we also have the utilities, and that is the $200 right here. We also have the gross income, which is $3,800. And then we have one more thing, and that is the Gdsr. And that's because we know that we're trying to find the maximum monthly mortgage payment, the biggest mortgage payment that we have. And since we know that we want to find the maximum, we will use the maximum Gdsr that we can achieve, and that is 32%. And so what you see in this case is that this will be 0.32. The mortgage payment is our unknown, which we will find. This we all have. So we have in this equation, we have everything except for one value. And so all we need to do is solve this equation for this one value. So let's insert the numbers first. I shortened mortgage payment to MP, and we have plus 110 plus 200 divided by 3,800. Let's make this a little bit simpler so we can see what we actually have. We have MP plus 310 divided by 3,800. Let me explain what you have here. This equation basically tells you that your mortgage payment plus another $310 divided by 3,800 has to equal 0.32, 32%. Now to figure out what our mortgage payment is, I will multiply both sides by 3,800. That means that 1,216 has to be my mortgage payment plus the $310 of the utilities and property taxes. So what is my mortgage payment then? To figure that out, I just have to subtract 310 from this 1,216. So this gives me a maximum monthly mortgage payment of $906. So let me review what you've done here. Look at your 32% here multiplied by the 3,800. You have figured out with this, you figured out what is 32% of my gross income. Multiply 32% by 3,800. This is your maximum household expenses that you can afford based on your income. And the maximum household expenses that you can afford then are $1,216. So you can afford only $1,216 on your household expenses. Now there are three expenses in here. One of those is your mortgage payment, the other one is your property tax, and the other one is your utilities. So if I take the utilities and the property taxes away from my maximum household expenses, then I will be left with the maximum mortgage payment. And that gives me $906. And question B uses this maximum mortgage payment that I can afford based on my income, or based on 32% of my income. This maximum mortgage payment, how much of a mortgage can I get for it? Well, remember that we have this interest rate factor. Our bank allows us a mortgage for at an interest rate of 8.5% for 25 years. So if I know what my mortgage payments are, the $906, and I know the conversion factor from my mortgage payments to my mortgage, I can figure out how much of a mortgage I can afford. So the maximum mortgage will be equal to the mortgage payment the maximum mortgage payment that I was able to calculate here, divided by the interest rate factor, by the conversion that gets me to the mortgage. What we're doing is this line right here. Take the mortgage payment divided by the factor and you get your mortgage. So this is the mortgage that I can get with a payment of $906 per month. The question, however, is not asking for the mortgage that you can afford. It's asking for the most expensive home that you can afford. Now, if you go back to the question, you can see that you have a down payment of $20,000. In other words, you have $20,000 in your account available to you. So what is the most expensive home that you can afford? Well, if the bank allows you to borrow this much and you have $20,000 still available to you, then your most expensive house that you can buy is this together, these two values together. So you can afford a house at a value of $133,962.26 based on your maximum GDSR. Now, if you look back at the house that you do want to buy, the house is valued at $193,000. You should already see that you can't afford that house. And so the next two questions basically deal with, okay, if I want to buy that house, what is going to be my GDSR? So in the first part of this question, what we have done is we've viewed the options that this family or that you have here in this case from the perspective of the maximum amount that you can actually pay. We started everything from that premise of the 32% maximum GDSR. Now what we will do in the last two questions is to view it from the other perspective. This is the home that you do want to have. So with this home, what is my GDSR now if I want to be able to buy this house? So first of all, you have to realize that, again, I have a $20,000 down payment, as it says here, which means I do not need to take a mortgage of $193,000. My mortgage that I will need to take is only worth $173,000. And that's because I'm already paying $20,000 of my house, and I will now need to afford a mortgage of $173,000. With this total mortgage, I can determine what my monthly mortgage payments are, because I know that I have an 8.5% interest rate for 25 years. That is an interest rate factor of 0.00795. That means that this much of my mortgage here will be my monthly mortgage payments. And so this is where I use this concept here, where I take my mortgage and multiply it by this factor to find out my mortgage payment, my monthly mortgage payment. So the monthly mortgage payments that I would have to be able to make to afford this house would be $1,375.35. And so you should be able to compare this to the previous two questions that I've had before. Here you can see that your maximum amount that you could pay is $906. Well, that's way below $1,375, right? And you should also see that your maximum affordable house here that we calculated in B was $133,962, whereas I want to purchase a house for $193,000. So again, that's way too much, way above what I can actually afford based on the 32%. All right, so what is then the GDSR if I do purchase this home? So that means I need to use a monthly payment of this, monthly mortgage payment of this, and I know what my property taxes are and what my utilities are and my gross income is. So I will use the same numbers, but my mortgage payment, I'll use the one number that I would like to use to buy this house. So here's all the work. We have the GDSR is mortgage payment plus property tax plus utilities divided by the gross income. Mortgage payment was the one that I would like to use, plus 110 from the property taxes above, and the 200 utilities, the same with the 3,800 for the gross income. Adding the numerator together, dividing it by 3,800 will give me a decimal of 0.4435, which is a percentage of 44.35%. So you should definitely see that you can't afford this house since your GDSR is way above 32%. And so the question that you can expect from this section is, use the GDSR to explain if you can afford this house or not. And so you have two different options here. One of those is you can use the 32% initially to figure out what the maximum affordable house is that you can buy, and then therefore say, you know what, I can't purchase this place. Or you can go from the other perspective of using that place as your starting point, figuring out the monthly payments, and then using that to figure out your GDSR. Either one of those is a valid argument, but you should be able to do each one of these questions. So you should be able to find your maximum monthly mortgage payment using a GDSR of 32%, which is the maximum that you should get. And using that, you should be able to find the most expensive home. So you should be able to convert that into a mortgage, as we have done here as well. And the same thing with the other one, you should be able to go from a mortgage to your mortgage payments. So here's the mortgage to the mortgage payment, and then using that mortgage payment to calculate a GDSR.